and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. David Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new TEAM therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. David is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda and Tyanne.
Hello, David.
Wow, such a privilege to actually see the face that goes with that.
Because it's so goofy. Well, welcome everyone to episode 218. Today we have a really special guest that David and I are both super excited is on the podcast, and we're happy to introduce her to everyone. And that's Tyanne Truong, who is an incredible therapist out of Oklahoma. And hi, Tyanne.
Hi, Rhonda and David.
Hi,
I'm
Tyanne.
so excited to be here.
Cool.
We're excited to have you for sure.
Yeah. So I thought I would first read a really brief endorsement, and then I kind of have an announcement to make that I think people might be excited about, and then we're going to jump into our interview with Tyanne. So someone recently listened to the very first podcast that you and Fabrice did, David, the introduction to the TEAM model, whose name is Jean, and then Jean sent us this very brief but enthusiastic endorsement he wrote, "My mind feels like popcorn. I'm bursting with hope as I listen to the insightful, honest, compassionate, respectful things Dr. Burns is saying."
Awesome. Thank you. Just as an aside, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. And just today, I got an email from somebody who listened to that podcast, which is part of the free depression course on my website, and just blasted me. Just said how awful it was. So we don't want to let things go to our head too much.
True. Oh, cool. Well, I also wanted to let people know that starting December 2nd, I, along with Richard Lam and another who's a really incredible TEAM therapist, and Leigh Harrington, who is also a TEAM therapist, who's a fantastic teacher, are going to start a new group for training. And it's going to be on Wednesdays from 9 to 11. And we're having it from 9 a.m. to 11 to accommodate people who do not live in the United States and don't live in Canada. And it's going to be free training. We're following the same format that Dr. Burns and Jill Levitt have created for their free Tuesday training. And if you're interested in being a part of the training, there's going to be a Google form to fill out. And the Google form is going to be in today's show notes. So please fill it out. And then the form will automatically be sent to Richard and me. And then we'll be starting the class as soon as possible.
I have a quick question for you. The Tuesday group at Stanford is focused on people in the San Francisco Bay Area, therapists who can come and get unlimited free training, and also going down to the Central Valley of California. And so the goal with the new group would be to give people who are not living in the Bay Area a chance to attend the Tuesday group, something just like the Tuesday group. And I love the fact that you've scheduled it from 9 to 11 in the morning, so to make it easier for people from India and Asia and various places in England and so forth to attend. But are you saying people from the United States will not be, and Canada will not be permitted to attend?
No, we're taking anyone who wants to.
Oh, great.
Time up so that if people from outside of the United States want to come, the time will be more accommodating for them. But anyone who wants to can come. Yeah,
thank you. I'm excited about it, and this gives you a chance to hook up with us and participate in this exciting phenomenon that's been going on really for 20 years with my group at Stanford. When I started it, faculty people said, "You'll never get an evening group going." People have tried it for decades at Stanford, and residents won't come and people won't come. They're just too busy. But it has actually persisted and blossomed, and we're now have about close to 50 people every Tuesday night, and I'm lucky to teach with you, Rhonda, and Jill Levitt, and some really fantastic teachers, Helen, Yenny, Comption, and we've just been having so much fun. And so we want to include people from all over the world, and we're hopeful that some of you, once you get this free training and begin to see how the team model works and begin to have success with it, will want to start your own groups, your own training. And that brings us to Tyanne, who is a person who has actually done that and has your own online fantastic teaching groups and your own online practice. But this is part of the series started by Rhonda on featuring people who are doing unique things with the team model. And so we're excited to hear about you, your personal background, Tyanne, your clinical work, your teaching, and especially your focus on OBGYN, women with pregnancy, women with postpartum depression, and see how you work with that group. And I would say I had my first chance to do co-therapy with you at the Atlanta Intensive last year. And you were so fantastic in our work with Michael, who had severe crippling anxiety, social anxiety, and his life was transformed by that. And I saw the magic of Tyanne, similar to the magic of other great teachers and team therapists, that you combined tremendous heart, tremendous warmth, which is so important to bring out the tears and give people a safe place to be accepted and to take chances. Without emotion and heart, all the techniques in the world will never get you anywhere. They'll just fall flat. But at the same time, you are combining that with your own genius mind, your brilliant, shrewd techniques and insights, and every word that comes out of your mouth is mind-blowing, and so that will happen now.
Oh goodness. I feel no pressure at all.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're just so thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much for those kind words, and I'm truly just really honored to be here.
Oh yeah, and we're honored to have you. I'm sorry I interrupted you before. Okay, let's just start kind of easy, Tyanne, and tell us a little bit about who you are and what your background is, and what's the Tyanne story?
Yeah, I'm just want to thank both of you for having me, because I'm just amazed that I am an avid listener to the podcast. I've listened to every single episode, so it feels pretty amazing that there's an episode where I'm featured. And I'm just humbled by the experience. But yeah, I'm just super passionate about TEAM-CBT, and got into the field actually starting out as a pre-med student. And then psychology was like my side study.
Can I stop for just one quick second there? I'm hearing clicking. Are you hearing that, Rhonda?
I'm hearing it.
Is it
You're hearing clicking?
Yeah, like maybe it's your microphone bouncing against the button or something, or
like right now, is it still clicking?
No.
Okay, so maybe I should use less hand motions, maybe.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So you started out as a pre-med student.
Yeah, and so I realized I hated all of my medical classes. And then I loved all of my psychology classes, and then ended up realizing, I'm in the pre-med field for all the wrong reasons, to honor the parents, etc. And ended up going to graduate school instead of applying for medical school, and never regretted that decision. But yeah, there was initially some pushback because there's not a lot of knowledge of psychology or mental health treatment by my parents, and especially in Vietnam. My mom actually literally asked me, "So you're going to be talking to crazy people all day?" And then she was trying to convince me out of the field. But graduate school studies is so generic. And then once I found TEAM-CBT, I just found it to be so transformative. Not just for the clients, but for me as well. And then that actually gave me the confidence to start my private practice, where I do now specialize working with postpartum women.
How did that become your specialty, Tyanne?
Yeah, I became really passionate about it because I went through the struggle myself after having my first daughter. About 4.5 years ago, I just always wanted children, had a great pregnancy, and then it just felt like the rug was pulled from under me after I had my baby, where I just had never been hit with so much depression and anxiety and just self-loathing, and it was truly a really painful experience to have gone through. And it shocked me. We were all confused about what's going on. Why am I so anxious? I couldn't sleep very well. I was scared of everything, including like her waking up, and I can't soothe her. Didn't feel like I was a good enough mother. Thought someone, ultimately that they'd be better off without me. I like at my lowest point, it's still a bit painful to talk about actually, but I actually asked my mom to raise her, and my mom was just terrified. She knew me as this confident, happy person, and then really thought I'd have so much joy after having my baby, and then I just really lost myself. And so once I started to overcome my struggles after about 3 months or so, I became really passionate about becoming a resource for these women who are going through these struggles, because at the time that I was struggling, there wasn't really a lot of specialized help. And there was a lot of encouragement, to take medication, see your OB and get medications, which I did do and ultimately stopped because I actually found it made me more anxious. And then they actually told me that was normal. Like initially when you're taking antidepressants, you're going to feel more anxious. You're supposed to wait it out for a few weeks to a month or so, which felt kind of bizarre, right? Like I need treatment for my anxious symptoms, and kind of told that it's expected to make you feel worse first, or that's normal, or that's not uncommon. And so I was really passionate about combining TEAM-CBT for the treatment of postpartum women, knowing how painful and devastating that experience was on a personal level, how important it is to feel adequate and good enough for this most important job. And then when postpartum depression and anxiety just robs you of that joy, I felt really passionate about helping people with this powerful model that I know has worked with many people. But I was actually a little bit nervous, not knowing if TEAM-CBT could be effective with postpartum women, because from trainings that I started to take, they talked about, it's biological, it's hormonal. A big encouragement of combining talk therapy with medication. So I just didn't know. So I was actually excited, but also scared. And it was kind of a trial and error to combine TEAM-CBT with postpartum women, and ultimately have found it to be super successful with the large majority of the women who are willing to do the active work with TEAM-CBT. They get better.
Yes, that's been my experience too. We get a lot of messages in society that aren't always based on scientific evidence and proof, and certainly there are massive social and physical and hormonal changes when a baby is born.
Mm-hmm.
But the team model, in my experience, in the majority of cases, it just works perfectly with that group, because if you ask, what are you thinking? What are you telling yourself when you're anxious? What are the thoughts that make you feel ashamed and inadequate and down? They turn out to be just classic depression and anxiety thoughts, like I shouldn't be feeling this way. A new mother's supposed to be excited and filled with love, and I'm not. Maybe I'm not good enough. And then, as you say, sometimes thinking darkly, all the way down to maybe I don't deserve to live. Maybe I shouldn't live, and the horrible pain that those thoughts cause.
Right.
But again, they have the same distortions as anyone's negative thoughts. And when you use the team model and show, like in your case, what do these thoughts and feelings show about you that's positive and awesome to melt away the resistance? And you were maybe just a tiny bit like the woman in, I think it's the first chapter of Feeling Great, my new book, who was postpartum and was also
Right.
telling herself, her first baby was born after struggling with her husband for years, thinking they couldn't have a baby. And she even did a podcast on that, what's the meaning of life type of thing with Daisy. Like she was thinking, if I can't have a baby, then you can't really feel happy and fulfilled. And that was one of our most popular early podcasts. And then weirdly, a week after that podcast, she became pregnant.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember Daisy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You did miracles, Dr. Burns.
Yeah. But then when the baby was born, it's the same as you. She was saying, I'm supposed to be so enthusiastic, but she had a high-powered career and she was missing her work and her research and also thinking, the baby's having trouble nursing and this means I'm a failure as a mother. And the fact that I'm not always super excited means I'm a failure as a mother. It was that same perfectionism and putting tremendous pressure on yourself. And those thoughts and feelings lead to great success that show great ethical standards and high standards for yourself. And just as for her, it's driven her to tremendous success. It's also driven you to tremendous success. And many of us who are perfectionistic, but then there's the downside, is it becomes hard to accept your humanness.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think there's expectations of moms too to always be happy, always be joyous and loving. There's almost this perfectionistic expectations of moms in our society.
Yeah.
And then when we find that we're not immediately bonded and loving every single moment, then we feel like, gosh, something's wrong with me. Am I a monster to not want to love my baby or be with her at all times? And the moments where I felt like, gosh, did I make a mistake in bringing a baby into the world was the moment where I felt like, truly, am I a monster? What kind of mom doesn't just fully enjoy her baby at all times? But you're absolutely right, Dr. Burns. There's then these themes of negative thoughts that once we actually start to defeat them at that gut level that you're talking about, it truly shifts their mood. And I've definitely seen that regardless of the trainings that I've taken where they talk about you got to get their sleep right first. You got to make sure they get their hormones balanced and all of these other requirements. I haven't seen that to be completely necessary before we see healing and mood lift.
I haven't seen that either. When I worked with the woman that I described in Feeling Great, who had the severe postpartum depression, she recovered pretty much entirely in a single hour-and-a-half session through Zoom or something like that. We even did it on the telephone. I can't recall. But the moment you change the way you think, you can change the way you feel. But you have to stop believing those negative thoughts. But people don't get this. Epictetus talked about it 2,000 years ago. The Buddha probably talked about the same thing 2,500 years ago. Your thoughts create your emotions. It's very simple. And yet people don't accept it. They don't understand it, they don't believe it, they don't grasp it. But that's the essence of the cognitive part of the therapy. Your thoughts absolutely create all of your emotions. It's not what's happening to you, but the way you're thinking about it. And the moment you crush those distorted thoughts and see that's not really true, it's not really true that Tyanne is a monster, but it is so weird that as human beings, we can buy into these horrible things and sometimes even want to end our lives thinking we're such horrendous failures. and not see all the terrible distortions, the all or nothing thinking, the perfectionism, the unreasonable should statements. I should always be giving. I should always have it all together. I should always be happy. I should always give to my family, and I should never be frustrated, never be upset, never be anxious, never be disappointed. I'm supposed to want to love and bond all the time. And we put ourselves under tremendous pressures. I'll just shut up because what you're saying is more interesting. Yeah,
Tyanne,
Rhonda.
it seems to me that you're really doing cutting edge work with your clients and patients. And you've posted some things on the listserv that are really interesting about how in the medical, the way medical doctors or the other trainings that you've gone to, they're really emphasizing medication. Like, what was your experience? And I'm wondering, because people are getting better, patients are getting better with you who aren't taking antidepressants or anti-anxiety medication. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that a little bit. Like, I'm kind of guessing you get a lot of your referrals from OBGYNs whose patients are going through postpartum depression. And are they in conflict with you, or do they support you, or within your arena, how is that handled?
Yeah, they're actually quite supportive of the way that I do practice, just because they've seen results with past patients. And I've even worked with OBs, like if a client is on Xanax or Klonopin or Valium or other benzos, that they do eventually work to wean off of, especially the benzos, when we're doing exposure work and treating their anxiety. And so we do have a collaborative relationship with the OBs that do refer to me. But all of that to say is, the large majority of my clients do get better without medications, but I don't want to down it for all people. I have had a few who felt like, oh, once I also added an antidepressant, it gave them an additional mood lift. Sometimes they prefer that over continuous homework. So for a few, that does still work for them, and I don't want to down that as an option, that does work for some people. But just from my experience, the large majority of people, probably 80 to 90% of my clients, get better strictly from TEAM-CBT.
That's so cool.
I had a question about another posting that you put on the listserv was that a lot of people talk about postpartum depression, but people aren't really talking about postpartum anxiety. And you mentioned that a little bit. I was wondering if you could talk about what your experiences have been with women who are coping with postpartum anxiety. Yeah. And maybe you could talk to us about a patient or two that you've worked with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think we hear a lot about postpartum depression and moms just kind of being sad or tearful or disconnected from their babies. But actually, the most common symptom is actually anxiety in postpartum. So as you know, we use the brief mood survey with all of our clients before and after every session. And every single one of my clients marked down anxiety. And often anxiety is even higher than depression for most of them. And through research, too, we find that anxiety is actually the most prominent symptom in postpartum women. And so when I'm treating a postpartum woman with anxiety, I just go through the treatment models with TEAM, where I have found positive reframing to be super powerful, where, initially with our negative emotions, we feel like, gosh, I just need to calm down. Why am I worrying so much? My whole family is telling me I just need to calm down. And the positive reframing, where it honors their emotions. Why are you feeling this anxious and worried about your child's well-being? What does it show about you that's actually really positive? They're kind of mind blown that it shows how truly caring they are, and even that high anxiety keeps them protective. And it's even evolutionary that, if moms are on guard about the lion eating their baby, they're more likely to keep their baby safe. And so once they honor it, I feel like it truly heals a lot of the symptoms and sheds the shame already. And then once we use the tools, it's pretty powerful. So with postpartum anxiety and postpartum women, we actually see intrusive thoughts to be a really common symptom. So Karen Kleinman is one of the experts who work with postpartum women, and in her research, she finds about 91% of new moms have intrusive thoughts of bad things happening to their baby, either by their own hands or someone else's. And so, there may be fears of like the baby suffocating. I avoid going to the crib to check on them because I think I'll find them dead. Sometimes it gets even kind of violent, like accidents will happen. I've had a lot of clients who have visions of like, I left the baby in the car seat, I'll find them dead. I throw them down the stairs. And I apologize beforehand if this feels too gruesome, but this is often the nature of the intrusive thoughts in the women that I've worked with. Fears of contamination, losing the baby, intentional harm with knives seems to be a theme that comes up for them. Even unacceptable sexual thoughts are typical themes of intrusive thoughts that come with the postpartum anxiety here.
I've seen that too. I've also seen that in men with a new baby.
Yes, exactly.
I had a physician who was a really nice guy. He was working in a poor area of Philadelphia and treating a lot of people for free and working 60 hours a week and giving. He had the new baby and he had thoughts of throwing it. They lived on the second floor of an apartment building and throwing it over the edge. And the thing that was helpful for him, although it's be different for everyone, was to realize the hidden emotion model. I don't know if you use that one. I was
just going to bring that up. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. And even though I work almost solely with women, the research has also found that 88% of new dads have intrusive thoughts as well.
Right.
About harm coming to the baby. So it's kind of interesting how that comes about. But you're absolutely right, Dr. Burns. I use then the positive reframing first, through the motivational model, all of our assessment of resistance tools. But I found the hidden emotion to be huge. Like the case example I can think of, like that woman who kept having visions of leaving her baby in the car seat. She also would have a lot of anxiety at night. Putting the baby down, not being afraid that, the baby's going to stop breathing. The hidden emotions often are, the here and now issues like, my husband's not helping out enough.
Yeah.
But I feel guilty to ask him to help me because I want to be a good wife. I want to be nice to him. He's already working so much. But the more that she, again, avoids that frustration or resentment towards him, the more she started to get even more worried about the baby's well-being, even some panic attacks or just more intrusive thoughts about bad things happening. And so, of course, when we find that hidden emotion, the first step is insight, but the second step is action. You have to do something about it. So we will do communication training. Let's have this conversation with him and find a balanced solution for both of you. And it's pretty amazing how often that treats a good chunk of the anxiety for a lot of my postpartum women.
I love what you're saying. It's just so cool. It was the same with this fellow that, why is he having fantasies of, throwing the baby over? Well, that maybe he's angry with the baby. And why is he angry? Because he's got this new burden on top of the 60 hours a week.
Exactly.
And so then rather than trying to suppress or control these impulses is to express those feelings and then go about making changes. Maybe you're giving too much and have a right to cut back and to carve out some time for yourself. And then, suddenly, as you say, the anxiety disappeared, the intrusive thoughts disappeared. And that's that niceness phenomenon that triggers an awful lot of anxiety, that we all have feelings, but people prone to anxiety have this niceness thing. I'm supposed to be nice all the time. I'm not allowed to be angry. I'm not allowed to be unhappy about things or to ask people for what I want and need. And it's such a beautiful gift to give someone that insight, because not only does it free them up emotionally to be more real, more in touch with their feelings and more to share those feelings, but also frees people up to experience rapid, sometimes almost overnight, elimination of anxiety. And that's actually kind of a psychoanalytic technique. TEAM, as you know, just draws from many schools of therapy, but that's that's kind of like simplistic psychoanalysis. It's like telling people, I know you're suppressing something, and I insist you bring it to conscious awareness. You're upset about something. Tell me what you're upset about, and then usually pretty quickly the patient can come up with it, and then you get this aha experience, and that plus the positive reframing. They're such powerful, beautiful tools, and I sometimes get kind of frustrated that the field is so obsessed with these delusional ideas that this is biological, this pill is going to cure you. And as you say, sometimes medications can be helpful, even life-saving, but the vast majority of people can be treated so much more beautifully without it. I guess one of the problems is we don't have enough Tyann's around who have the intelligence and the skill to do this type of delicate but amazing, team therapy, combining compassion with these insights and powerful techniques that can lead to really, really rapid healing. Tell us more. Yeah. Rhonda, talk.
Yeah, I just want to.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to, what you were talking about with the hidden emotion, Dr. Burns, distinguish that these intrusive thoughts are never a hidden indication that you actually want to harm your baby, or that it's a hidden desire for your husband to die of, whatever that gruesome content is. It's almost always, from what I've seen, an issue in the here and now.
Yeah.
Not like a gruesome, hidden, horrible feature
Right.
in a human being, but it's an issue in the here and now that they just need to resolve. I've even had people where mother-in-law called 6 times a day, and it was too frustrating, and so they would start to have panic attacks.
Yeah.
And then just needed to have a conversation, but it's a scary conversation. So hidden emotion conversations are kind of exposure in and of itself.
Yeah, right.
And I even have to work through resistance of, working through what are the good reasons to not share your emotions and to not be real or share your anger with them. And once they work through that, then they can have an honest and real conversation that's often so healing for them and their loved ones to feel more genuine and closer to. So yeah, the hidden emotion has been really cool to see how it unfolds, but it's not a unconscious desire to harm.
I'm kind of wondering if you're also using a lot of identifying the distortions after you do work and create the positive reframe. Can you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I just go through actually all of our steps where after the positive reframe, we do, get really specific. What's one moment in time when you did get really anxious? And then we'll have their anxious thoughts and we can identify the distortions there. And then, we get into methods whether it's the hidden emotion. I found exposure to also be a big part, because the hidden emotion sometimes creates a lot of healing for the anxiety, but they still tend to have these images that they fight.
Yeah.
And so instead of fighting them or trying to suppress them, which also in my training, they were like, be really cautious. Don't have people ruminate on their intrusive thoughts. And then I feel like that actually buys into like, it's really fearful and dangerous to have these thoughts, when there's actually zero correlation with intrusive thoughts and actual harm coming to their baby.
Right.
So I found it to actually be really important to have the women actually even go towards these scary thoughts. And it sounds really gruesome, right? Like my client who's afraid that she keeps seeing her baby in the car seat dead. And so it sounds like gruesome to have her actually even visualize that. But what's important is when we have them visualize that, to not engage in any suppression or mental compulsions or seeking reassurance. Because in the past, when she would have that intrusive thought, she would then call daycare to make sure the baby's there. Or she would, check with her husband to make sure everything's okay. And all of this reassurance actually fed more power to the danger of these thoughts. So instead, we would have her walk through the whole script. What's the worst case scenario over and over again? I track her anxiety. And then ultimately, of course, initially it creates panic. And that's the whole point. We sit with those symptoms. We sit with the sensations without trying to suppress them. without trying to seek reassurance. And then as she just repeated it over and over, by the end of that, she's like, this is ridiculous. Like, you know, he's fine. And she just came to that conclusion herself where she doesn't need to continue to reassure herself. But yeah, it's actually been really important to go towards the fearful content of these intrusive thoughts instead of trying to suppress them or avoid them.
I agree
according to the trainings.
I agree with you 200%, and I've seen that again in many of the patients I've treated. But it takes courage on the part of the therapist, and a lot of, as you say, a lot of therapists teach, oh, you shouldn't use exposure. The patient is too fragile. And most therapists, 2/3 of the therapists in the United States, or 75, 80%, refuse to use exposure because they're thinking, oh, this is too powerful. But it does require courage. And as you say, I've seen this in my patients too. Often the fantasies are very gruesome ones. And I had a patient who, after her baby was born, she thought she maybe had the wrong baby. And she kept checking the baby. Is this my baby? And it was just a real intense obsessions. I tried 40 cognitive techniques that did not work. Even the hidden emotion didn't work. And I didn't have positive reframing in those days, but I don't know if that would have helped. But finally, I said, if your baby was switched, what are you the most afraid of? And then she said, well, then maybe some bad people got her. And then what are you afraid of? And it turned out she had these horrible fantasies of her baby being tortured to death by horrible people. And I said, well, I've got to stick with what I believe in, but I don't know if this is good therapy or malpractice, but I asked her to fantasize that as gruesome as possible. And after a full hour, she was still 100% anxious. And it actually took 2 full sessions of doing that, and then practicing at home. And finally, it broke, and she realized the thing was absurd, but it was agonizing for her. And it was about, I would say, 2.5 hours of fantasizing her baby being tortured to death in the most gruesome way. And people listening to the show will probably think this is horribly shocking and malpractice or something. And that was what I was thinking too, but everything else had failed. And then suddenly, I think the 3rd time she practiced at home, she couldn't make herself anxious, and she thought, this is ridiculous, and went in and looked at her baby and saw, oh, this is my baby, and felt love finally flooding into her heart. And she realized these obsessions were absurd. And the next session, we were able to terminate the treatment. But that is such a vitally important dimension of treatment. You've mentioned 3 or 4 really, really powerful dimensions. And we haven't talked too much about the distorted thoughts or self-defeating beliefs, but that would be the 4th important dimension. I love the way you express these things so articulately and have mastered these things. When I see a therapist who puts all the components together the way you're doing it, just I'm in awe of your skills, technical skills, and your heart and your articulateness too, and also your love for what you do.
Well, you do get all the credit, Dr. Byrne.
Thank you for that. My narcissism says, "Tell me more." But I'm glad to have been able to learn some of these things and to develop some of these things and to find amazing colleagues who want to learn how to do them too, and to share them with people. But again, I get disappointed and frustrated and mad sometimes that people wanting to latch onto these simplistic things, which if they worked would be great. But yes, you can take a benzo. I once took a 1/4 milligram Xanax that I was sleeping overnight at the hospital where I worked, and I was having trouble getting to sleep. So I chewed a 1/4 milligram Xanax and swallowed it with some water. Because if you chew it, it's like getting a shot, an intramuscular shot. It'll go into effect really fast. And I fell asleep in 20 minutes and woke up. I felt like a new man. I was filled with joy and energy and no side effects. I thought, boy, this is better than French fries. But after about a month, I realized I was taking one every night and that I had gotten addicted to it. And then I said, I got to get off of this. I don't want to be addicted to this. And it took 3 weeks of withdrawal to get off of it. And the withdrawal was intense anxiety and insomnia, both. And that's where I learned from personal experience that benzodiazepines have a nice short-term effect. But if you keep taking them, you get into a trap of addictions. And so now I never will prescribe benzos. And if a patient comes to me on benzos, I tell them I can't treat you because benzos will make it impossible to recover. But if you're willing to withdraw under my supervision slowly and carefully, then I can show you some ways to defeat the anxiety without taking these pills. But I guess it's just human nature. We're all looking for a simple fix. And if you got a headache, you want to take an aspirin or a Tylenol, and it usually works. But that same model for human depression and human anxiety and feeling like you're not good enough, the pills, in my experience, are not, for most people, the solution. And I'm just so grateful that we've got amazing tools that do provide not only a solution, but a kind of expansion of your consciousness. Or that's why I like the hidden emotion model, because you're no longer fighting a disorder called anxiety. Recovery means becoming more of a human being, being able to share your feelings and with others, become more genuine and experience life and your role in life in a much broader and more meaningful way.
Tyanne, I'm wondering, are there certain aspects or attributes that would lead a woman to have postpartum anxiety or depression? Like, is it more likely a young mother or an older mother, or is it somebody in a different socioeconomic status or race or ethnicity? Is there a cultural aspect to the work that you do?
According to the research, they do see higher rates in like poorer populations of postpartum depression and anxiety. At the same time, just through my practice, I do take some insurance as well, and I have seen a wide variety of socioeconomic statuses and different cultures. And more often than not, I just see like perfectionism play a big part in and the expectations, that the more they buy into the expectations of we should always be good, kind, loving, not have our human emotions, not ever feel anger or resent our baby or husband at times. I feel like that had often been more of a common link between the women that I've treated that ended up with more symptoms of postpartum depression and anxiety.
And tell us a little bit about the training and the teachings that you do in Oklahoma. And I don't know if the teachings you do are open to anyone. Tell us about what you do.
Yeah, I'm really passionate about TEAM-CBT training, just because I've seen the power of it, like what Dr. Burns was talking about, where it takes courage to do exposure. Dr. Burns' podcast on that woman actually gave me courage to begin to try to do exposure with my clients with their intrusive thoughts. And there's just something so powerful when we can see, because honestly, I'm always like at least moderately anxious before I lead a client through exposure. But there's something so powerful once they get free of it, that it's just a beautiful and meaningful process to really see that liberation from that torture of the anxiety and the depression. And so once I started to see that kind of healing, where I think you both have talked about on the podcast, where it feels so deep and even spiritual when we see that transformation in people, that once I saw that, I said, I have to spread this, and became so passionate on getting to level 4 certification through FGI, while Dr. Burns is awesome and amazing and, is genius in creating these components in a simple way that can be recreated, I found that it was really important for me to get specific feedback and training through FGI and feel so grateful for them. Mike Christensen was actually my first trainer. I want to give a shout out to him. I tell him he's my hero. He's led me from level 1 to level 3. And then from there, I've taken trainings with Jill and Angela Crum, Matt and Daniel. And it's just been completely life-changing. So I was really passionate about, once I get to level 4, I'm going to spread it throughout Oklahoma. And so I have started to do that ever since 2019. Started to do some local trainings. I am the first TEAM-CBT therapist and trainer in Oklahoma. So I'm doing another local training this coming November 13th and 20th for 32 Oklahoman therapists.
Say that again, what you just said. When is the training coming up?
It's a local training on November 13th and 20th for some local Oklahoman therapists, and it's for an agency, so it's already filled up. So.
Oh yeah, and then by the time this is broadcast, that'll be in the past at any rate. But to ask a slightly different question, if there are listeners now who would like to train with you, and I suspect there will be, or who are looking for treatment, I presume your trainings are online.
Yes, exactly. I also do 2-day boot camp trainings about every other month. And I just take about 8 therapists, so it can be a small and intimate setting where they can get feedback, because I think that's so crucial. While these tools are so powerful, I think we need that specific feedback on how we practice it.
Oh, yeah.
Where we can actually really hone our skills and improve on a specific level. Because I think we can watch it all day long, but recreating it
it requires training. It's harder than it sounds, and it doesn't even. I mean, it doesn't even sound easy. I mean, but it is hard, but a fantastic thing to develop these skills and to give that spiritual transformation to people. Now, we'll put your contact in the show notes for sure. But if a lot of people don't get the show notes, they listen on YouTube or various other outlets. So if somebody, say a therapist, wants to attend one of your trainings and connect with you, or if maybe someone in Oklahoma is wanting or needing treatment, what is the best way for people to contact you?
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Burns. For training, they can just go to my training website, which is TEAM-CBTtraining.com. And then they can see all the trainings that I offer and the dates. And for treatment...
Now, just stop on that for just a second. TEAM-CBTtraining.com. And is it TEAM-CBT training all one word?
Yes.
So TEAM-CBTtraining.com, and you can find Tyanne and sign up for a variety of introductory or advanced training experiences. And then for treatment, what is the contact?
Yeah, my treatment website is lastingchangetherapy.com. And I was actually inspired to name it that name by you too, Dr. Burns, because you talked about creating lasting change for people with TEAM-CBT. And I feel like that's so crucial. And I love your motto where we teach our clients to become their own therapist and doing relapse prevention. And so when I started my private practice, that's where I got lasting change from.
That's a beautiful name, lastingchangetherapy.com. If you're looking for
lasting therapy that goes on and on for 10 years.
Lasting change, not lastingtherapy.com. I'm with you on that. Well, thank you so much, Tyanne. We had super high expectations for hanging out with you this morning, and you've really exceeded those expectations, both with your joy, with your personal sharing and vulnerability, which was very powerful, your crisp and clear explanations of several of the non-drug techniques that can not only be helpful but mind-blowing for everybody, but especially women with postpartum depression and all the shoulds that women place upon themselves. My mother was a minister's wife, and she, I think, struggled at times with depression. And she read a book in the 1950s when I was just growing up that I think helped her, by Karen Horney, the feminist psychiatrist who was born, I think, in the late 1890s. But she had all of the cognitive therapy kind of figured out ahead of Ellis and Beck and others. And she talked about shoulds, the tyranny of the shoulds, and how we say, I should do this, and I should do that, and I should be better than I am, and I shouldn't be like this, and how so much pain is created by the shoulds. And I think that women, all human beings are vulnerable to the power of the awful power of shoulds, but women in particular, because you're saying I should be a good wife often if you're married, and I should have a great career, and I should be a great mother, and that's about 3 full-time jobs, and plus I should be happy about everything all the time, and it's just great to give people a key so they can get out of that prison they're in and get back to breathing clear air and feeling free and feeling joy, so you can wake up in the morning and say it's great to be alive, instead of beating up on yourself with all these I'm not good enough statements. So anything in closing, Rhonda?
I just want to say thank you so much, Tyanne. And I love how you say liberation from the torture of anxiety and depression, which follows through with what Dr. Burns was saying regarding, being free from prison. And I think your patients and your students are so lucky to have you.
That we're lucky to have you too.
Yeah.
I think this is.
We're lucky to have both of you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Is this your second visit on the podcast?
Yes, the first visit was at that last 10 minutes with Michael when we were just interviewing him about the intensive.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well,
but this is my first full 40 minutes of fame.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, we'll look forward to the next edition with Tyanne.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for tuning in. We certainly appreciate your patronage. By the time you hear this, we'll probably have received our 3 millionth download. And remember, this is kind of a volunteer work. We don't have money for marketing and stuff. And so you're our marketing army. And so if you're on a listserv and you want to send out a link to my website, to feelinggood.com, the Feeling Good podcast page, and tell people, you might really love these podcasts. If people who are struggling with depression or anxiety, a lot of people have been helped a lot just by listening to the podcasts or reading one of my books like Feeling Good or the new one, Feeling Great. And a lot of therapists, we got an email from a young man, Kai Chen, who we're going to feature on a podcast, next week or, very, very soon. And he taught himself TEAM entirely from just listening to a year of podcasts, like what you've been doing. And now he's also beginning to experience not only fantastic personal change, but a fantastic boost in effectiveness with his patients. And so you might be doing someone a gift by tuning them into my website, all the free resources there, including the podcast and a lot more. So thank you, everybody, and have a beautiful day, and talk to you all next week. So bye-bye.
Bye. This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this episode under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. The theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donsel. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.